PC gaming's hella expensive, right?
No, that's a load of horse shit. I built this gaming PC for under $550, and I'm gonna show you how too.
Before we show you what we did, make sure you're subscribed to our channel here at GameSpot. Now Jimmy, tell me why you built this cheap gaming PC.
So there's this misconception that, PC gaming has to be really expensive, but it's actually really cheap, especially when you factor in Steam sales, humble bundle deals, and the fact that you don't have to pay for a gaming subscription service. In my opinion, it makes it the cheapest way to game. So I wanted to show you how to build a really cheap gaming PC. Let's get into it.
All right, let's kick off with the CPU. What did you choose for our processor, Jimmy?
You can get away with a CPU with 2 cores, but any respectable gaming PC is gonna have at least 4. And that's why we're going with AMD's recently released Ryzen 3 1200. At $109, it has 4 cores that can boost up to 3.4 gigahertz.
So for the most important part of a gaming PC, the GPU, tell us what you chose, man.
So we went with the GTX 1050, which is arguably the best bang for the buck card at $110. It has 2 gigabytes of VRAM, which makes it pretty good for 1080p gaming. It's also a 1.86 teraflop GPU, which is a higher flop count than the PS4 or Xbox One S.
Now that we picked out a GPU and a CPU, what did we choose for our motherboard?
We chose the BioStar A320MH Pro. It offers the AM4 socket support we need at an affordable $53. It also has 2 USB 3.1 ports, 2 USB ports, and 4 SATA connections.
Since we are building a cheap PC, we can either choose between having 4 gigabytes of RAM or 8 gigabytes of RAM, but what did you end up doing, dude?
I know this is a budget rig, but any respectable gaming PC is gonna have at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's why we went with 8 gigabytes of Patriot Viper Elite across 2 sticks.
This part's a little more tricky because a lot of cheap gaming PCs tend to go with just hard drives, but we did choose to include a solid state drive, so tell me why you chose to use an SSD.
Sure, so friends don't let friends build computers without SSDs. That's why I'm recommending an SSD in this build. We went with Kingston's A400 120 gigabyte SSD. That isn't a lot of storage, but it's enough for the OS and your favorite games. This will make your PC boot faster, load those games quicker, and make your PC feel much more responsive. I really recommend going with an SSD like right out of the gate, because if you really wanted to upgrade to one later, it's really pain in that ass.
So we opted to go with an SSD, but we still need a ton of storage for everything else. And what did you end up picking?
Yeah, so I opted to go with Western Digital's 1 terabyte hard drive. It costs around $50, and we could have shaved off around $10 by going with a 500 gigabyte solution, but I think the extra $10 is worth it for double the storage. It's also a 7200 RPM drive, which is faster than the 5400 RPM solutions that you'd find in the consoles.
All right, we picked out all of our performance components, but we still need the juice. What did we pick out for our power supply?
For our power supply, we went with EVGA's 430 watt W1 PSU. EVGA is one of the best power supply manufacturers out on the market, and our solution here offers enough juice for our system at $35.
We have all of our components now, but where are we housing all of them?
So for our case, we're picking Cooler Master's Master Box Lite 3.1. And just because it costs $40 doesn't mean it has to look ugly. It has acrylic front and side panels, a PSU cutout at the bottom, and overall it looks pretty sleek.
Sweet, we built up a gaming PC, but it ain't nothing without an operating system. So what did we go with?
So if you're really cheap, you can go with Linux and SteamOS. But the problem is, most games don't support Linux, so you really have to go with Windows. I was able to find a copy of Windows 10 online for under $30.
Now you know all the components that we used for our build, but it doesn't mean anything if we didn't test it out in any games. Jimmy, you played 4 different games, got some data?
Sure, yeah, the first game that we tested was GTA 5, which is a really popular game. It's actually very graphically demanding. We ran it on max at 1080p, and we got a 93 average FPS, which is really good.
Yeah, considering that this is an open world game where, you could have extensive draw distances and a lot of different things going on, I'm actually kind of surprised that it ran this well, especially with it on max settings.
The next game we tried was Blizzard's, highly popular competitive shooter Overwatch. I was able to run the game in ultra settings, again at 1080p, and we got an average FPS of 70. Which is, really important for a competitive game like this.
Yeah, and most cheap monitors that you're gonna pair with this computer are 60 hertz. This is a game you wanna play at least at 60 frames per second.
The next game that I tried was Witcher 3, which is, a very graphically demanding game. We weren't able to run it on max, but I was able to get a playable frame rate at medium. We got a 45 average FPS there.
Yeah, there's plenty of eye candy that you can use for The Witcher 3 to make it look amazing, but running it at medium at 1080p still looks pretty damn good. And 45 FPS is decent for this game because it's not a competitive game. It's an RPG where you want to kind of soak in the environment, enjoy the eye candy that you can use, and still get a good frame rate.
You know I don't find that amusing.
The last game you tested out was PLAYERUNKNOWN'S BATTLEGROUNDS. Now this one's a little tricky because it is still in early access and has some problems with optimization, but with your experience, how did it perform?
Yeah, so I was a little unsure about, if this rig could run this game because it is, very graphically demanding. As you mentioned, it's not optimized very well as of yet. But we were able to run it on medium with an average FPS of 38. So if you really wanted to play that game and you really wanted to build a cheap PC, you can actually just go with this.
Can you remind us of how much it's going to cost to build this rig?
Sure, yeah, our total came down to be $548.15. But for that, you can get a gaming rig that can play the latest and greatest games at 1080p. It can, play them at medium or in some cases max them out. So that's pretty kick-ass for the price.
One thing we do have to bring up though is the Xbox One X, because it is comparable in price and it can do games in 4K. But why would someone choose to build this over getting an Xbox One X?
Sure, well, our rig here costs about $50 more than Xbox One X. Microsoft probably isn't making a ton of money off the actual hardware sales, if at all. But, Microsoft kind of makes it up in the end when they sell you games and things like that. When you're going with a PC like this, you have access to the large library of PC games in existence and access to those Steam sales and Humble Bundle deals that we mentioned. And also, you want to factor in this can be a productivity machine. You can do video editing on this, you can do your homework, you can do your taxes. I don't think anyone's going to be doing their taxes on the Xbox One X. Just saying. I don't think so.
Maybe there's an app for that. Microsoft, get on it. Now, if you had a little bit more money, what would you do differently?
Sure, yeah, so I'd probably go with a beefier motherboard, maybe something like the B350 or X370, which will allow you to overclock your CPU. More USB ports, don't hurt, especially helps if you want to get something like the Oculus Rift, which just eats up a bunch of USB ports. And since this is a gaming PC, I'd probably invest in a beefier GPU as well, maybe something like the GTX 1060. But overall, I'm really happy with this build. It represents a really balanced machine that doesn't make a lot of unnecessary compromises.
If you like what we did here, give this video a thumbs up. Let us know in the comments what you want to see us do next. Do you want to see us do a PC that is for...
A PC for...
Any PC will do. Now, what do you want to see us do next? Do you want to see us do a PC that's meant for streaming or no compromises build? Let us know in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed to our channel here at GameSpot. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.